London is burning, not with fire but with fury. And tonight, the unthinkable just became reality. The House of Commons, the 800-year-old heart of British democracy, has been breached. Hundreds of protesters have stormed past police lines, flooding into Parliament Square, chanting one message: we want our country back. This isn't a movie. This isn't fiction. This is happening right now. This is the story the establishment doesn't want you to hear. If you want the truth about what's really happening in Britain right now, hit subscribe, because what you're about to see will shock you. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why this moment could change everything, not just for Britain, but for the entire world. It started quietly. October 14th, 2025. A cold Tuesday evening in central London. Small groups gathering in Parliament Square. Farmers with weathered hands, truckers who'd driven through the night, nurses still in their scrubs, veterans wearing their medals. People who'd never protested before. People who'd spent their entire lives following the rules. They held signs that read, "Betrayed," "Enough," and "Listen to us." Simple words, desperate words. But the government wasn't listening. They never do. Not to the voices that don't come with corporate donations or media influence. By 6 p.m, hundreds became thousands. People arrived from Manchester, from Birmingham, from Scotland and Wales. They came on buses, in cars, some even walked for miles. By 7 p.m, the chants began. Resign, justice, no more lies. The sound echoed off the stone walls of Westminster like thunder rolling across the Thames. Police formed barricades. Officers in neon vests, shields raised, faces tense behind their visors. They'd been warned this could turn ugly. What they didn't know was how fast it would spiral out of control. The air was thick with tension. You could feel it. That electric moment, right before the storm breaks. Reporters whispered into cameras. Helicopters circled overhead. And somewhere in the crowd, someone lit the first flare. Red light exploded across the darkening sky. That's when everything changed. Then came the moment that Britain will never forget. 7:43 p.m. Exactly 7:43 p.m. One protester pushed against the metal barrier. Then another, then 10, then 20. The barricade shook, metal groaning under the pressure. Officers shouted warnings, hands up, voices cracking with urgency. But their commands were swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Another flare shot into the sky, red light bleeding across Westminster Abbey, across Big Ben, across the face of British power itself. The barrier buckled. Metal screeched against ancient stone. And suddenly, with a sound like thunder, the line broke. Protesters poured through like water through a shattered dam. Officers stumbled backward, radios screaming for backup that wouldn't arrive in time. Shields clattered to the pavement. One officer, completely overwhelmed, fell to his knees as the crowd surged past him like a human wave. Within seconds, Parliament Square was flooded. Thousands of people, moving as one, driven by years of frustration that had finally found its breaking point. The gates of the House of Commons, gates that have stood for centuries, that witnessed the rise and fall of empires, were surrounded. Protesters waved Union Jacks, shouted into megaphones, held up their phones to live stream history unfolding. And for the first time in living memory, the symbol of British power looked vulnerable, fragile, human. Inside the building, MPs were evacuated to secure rooms deep in the parliamentary complex. Security alarms wailed through ancient corridors, where Churchill once walked, where debates shaped the modern world. Staff members ran through hallways, faces pale with shock. Outside, smoke from flares mixed with the cold October air, creating an almost apocalyptic scene. The kind of scene you'd expect to see in a distant country, not in the heart of London, not here, not in Britain. The chants grew louder, more unified, more powerful. This is our parliament. You don't speak for us, we are the people. News cameras captured it all. The BBC went live, interrupting regular programming. Sky News broke into their evening broadcast. CNN picked up the feed. Within minutes, the world was watching Britain's breaking point unfold in real time. Social media exploded. Number sign London uprising began trending globally. This wasn't just another protest anymore. This was an uprising. 2 miles away, inside number 10 Downing Street, panic. The Prime Minister stood frozen in front of a wall of television screens, watching his country unravel before his eyes. Around him, aides shouted into phones, their voices overlapping in chaos. Security officials in dark suits debated evacuation protocols in clipped, urgent tones. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner's voice crackled through the speakerphone, strained and desperate. Prime Minister, we've lost containment. I repeat, we have lost containment. 3 words that meant the unthinkable. Britain's government no longer controlled its own streets. The PM's chief of staff, a woman who'd navigated countless political storms, leaned in close, her voice urgent but steady. You need to speak. Now, right now, the country's watching, the world's watching. You need to say something. But what could he say? How do you address a nation when you're the reason they're in the streets? The same government that promised change, that promised to listen, now looked paralysed. Every promise felt like a lie too late to fix. Every word he could think of sounded hollow before it even left his mouth. Emergency cabinet meetings were called. Ministers arrived through back entrances, faces grim. They argued over whether to deploy military support, a decision not made since the riots of 2011. Some wanted a hard crackdown. Others feared that would only make things worse, turn protesters into martyrs. The room was suffocating with tension and the smell of stress and too much coffee. Outside, helicopter rotors thumped overhead, spotlights cutting through the smoke. Police reinforcements arrived in vans, riot gear clinking as they rushed to form new lines. But the crowd was too large, too angry, too determined. Every command was drowned out by chants of freedom, and we won't back down, and you work for us. Social media exploded like a bomb. Hashtags like #LondonUprising, #Westminster Siege, and #Britain. Rising trended globally within minutes, algorithms pushing the content to millions. Live streams showed protesters standing on the steps of Parliament, fists raised, voices hoarse from shouting, tears streaming down. Faces illuminated by flare light. One protester, a retired teacher named Margaret, who'd taught history for 35 years, told a reporter through tears, her voice shaking, "I've never done this before in my life. I've never broken a rule, but they're not listening anymore. They've forgotten we exist. They've forgotten we're human." Her words, captured on camera and shared millions of times, captured the sentiment of thousands. This wasn't about chaos for chaos's sake. It wasn't about anarchy or destruction. It was about desperation, about people who felt they had no other choice. At 9:17 p.m. exactly, the Prime Minister appeared on national television. His face was pale, almost grey under the harsh lights. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the podium. Behind him, through the windows of number 10, the faint sound of sirens wailed like ghosts. "My fellow citizens," he began, his voice shaking despite his best efforts to sound calm. "I urge you to stand down. Please, violence is not the answer. Chaos is not the path forward. We hear you, I hear you. We will listen. We will address your concerns. But this is not the way." He paused, searching for words that wouldn't come. "We are better than this. Britain is better than this. Please, return to your homes. Let us talk. Let us find solutions together." But it was too late for words, too late for promises, too late for "let us talk." The broadcast signal flickered and glitched. A technical issue, or maybe something more. When it returned, viewers saw not a strong leader, but a man out of touch, out of time, out of answers. Comments flooded social media faster than anyone could count them. "He still doesn't get it. Too little, too late. We're done listening to lies. Actions, not words." The crowd outside Westminster didn't hear his speech, or if they did, they didn't care anymore. The roar continued, louder than before. More flares lit the sky, red and white and gold. The government's authority, built over centuries of tradition and power, was crumbling in a single night. One protester, a young man with a megaphone and a voice raw from shouting, screamed into the night, "They had years to listen, years. Now it's our turn to be heard. Now it's our turn." The crowd roared its agreement, the sound rolling like thunder across London. The speech that was meant to calm the nation, to restore order, to remind people of British civility. It only fueled the fire. It proved what everyone in the streets already believed. The people in power had no idea what was happening. They were so far removed from reality that they couldn't even see the truth standing right in front of them. Across the globe, from Tokyo to Toronto, from Mumbai to Moscow, the reaction was instant and stunned. In Washington, D.C., the US president was pulled from a state dinner and briefed within minutes by his national security team. Advisors exchanged worried glances across the Situation Room table. "If this happens in Britain," one senior official muttered, pulling off his glasses and rubbing his eyes, "then nowhere is truly safe. Not us, not anyone." In Paris, President Macron called an emergency meeting of his cabinet at 11 p.m, fearing the unrest could spread across the channel like wildfire. French intelligence officials warned of copycat protests already being organised on social media. In Berlin, German officials debated whether Britain's chaos would destabilise the entire EU economy, trigger a financial contagion. The pound sterling plunged on Asian markets, dropping 8% in a matter of hours. Stock markets trembled. The FTSE futures crashed. Investors around the world watched in horror as footage of protesters flooding Westminster looped endlessly on every major network, on every screen, in every language. Russian state media could barely contain their glee. For decades, they lectured us about democracy and stability, one anchor sneered, his smile barely hidden. They told us how to run our country. Now look at them. Look at their precious democracy burning. The clip went viral across Russian social media, shared by millions. Beijing echoed the sentiment, state television calling it Western hypocrisy exposed, and the inevitable collapse of a failed system. Chinese commentators spoke of it as proof of democratic weakness. But ordinary people around the world reacted very differently. From New York to Warsaw, from Sydney to Delhi, from Sao Paulo to Seoul, millions watched the live streams and asked themselves the same chilling question. Could this happen here? Could this happen to us? Social media turned Britain's night of chaos into a global conversation that no government could control. Hashtags trended in 47 countries. Memes spread faster than news articles. Live streams were shared millions of times, algorithms amplifying the signal. The footage of protesters breaching Parliament, of ordinary people standing up to power, became the defining image of 2025. Diplomats in London went on high alert. Some embassies, quietly, without public announcements, began preparing evacuation plans for their citizens. Britain, once the very symbol of stability and order, now looked like a nation on the edge of something far darker. As dawn broke over London on October 15th, the streets were eerily quiet. Protesters had dispersed around 3 a.m, not because they were defeated, not because they'd given up, but because they'd made their point. They'd shown that power doesn't just flow from the top down. Sometimes it flows from the bottom up. Broken barricades lay scattered across Parliament Square like the aftermath of a battle. Flares had burned out, leaving black marks on ancient stones. Police regrouped, exhausted and shaken, many of them wondering what it all meant. Inside Westminster, MPs returned cautiously to their chambers as the sun rose. The building was intact, physically undamaged, but something intangible had been shattered forever, the illusion of untouchable authority. The belief that some things simply don't happen in Britain. The Prime Minister held an emergency meeting at 6 a.m. His advisers, who'd been awake all night, debated resignations, emergency reforms, and whether Britain could ever recover its reputation on the world stage. But outside, in cafes and homes across the country, a different conversation was happening. People weren't talking about the violence or the chaos. They were talking about why it happened, what it meant, whether things would finally change. "We've been ignored for too long," one protester told the BBC in an interview that would be watched millions of times. "Politicians stopped representing us years ago. Last night they finally heard us. Whether they'll actually listen, that's another question." This wasn't just a protest. It was a warning shot across the bow of every government in the world. Britain, the birthplace of modern parliamentary democracy, the nation that had stood stable through world wars and economic crises, had witnessed something it hadn't seen in generations. The people rising against their own government. Not with mindless violence, but with the desperation born from years of broken promises, ignored petitions, and a political class that forgot who they work for. The question now isn't what happened that night in Westminster. The evidence is clear. The footage exists. The world saw it. The real question is what happens next. Will the government actually listen this time? Will real reforms come, or just more empty promises? Will this be a turning point, or just another moment that gets buried under the next news cycle? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, if it can happen in Britain, stable, orderly, democratic Britain, can it happen anywhere? Can it happen in your country? This is the story the mainstream media won't tell you the full truth about. They'll focus on the chaos and ignore the reasons why. If you want to stay informed about what's really happening, not just what they want you to see, subscribe now. Drop a comment below. Do you think this could happen in your country? What would it take? And share this video with someone who needs to see it. Because what happened in London last night isn't just Britain's story anymore. It might be a preview of what's coming for all of us. The world is watching, the people are waking up, and the question isn't if this will happen again. It's where, it's when, and it's whether we'll be ready.